Okay, hi everyone. I want to welcome you to a new video from runhorse.com sports, and the title of this video is going to be 10 Texas Hold'em terms that most people don't understand. And I'm going to challenge you, do you know all 10? So that's the challenge today. So let's go ahead and talk about the terms and see if you know all 10. Bonus points if you can understand all 10. You are a real true Texas Hold'em player. Term number one, that's flopping a set. Okay, what does flopping a set mean? A lot of people get trips and a set mixed up. Trips is when you have three of a kind. And three of a kind is when there's a pair on the board and you have one in your hand. So for instance, there's a pair of aces on the board, ace in your hand, you have an ace jack, then you have trip aces with a jack kicker. So that's trips. If you have a set of aces, you have to have pocket aces. So to have a set, you always have to have pocket pair in your hand, and you have to flop the third card on the board. So if you have a pocket aces and the flop comes ace, nine, jack, you flopped a set of aces. So congratulations, you flopped. You don't have trips, you have a set. So that's the difference. And some people will mix up those terms. So people are going to understand you, but if you want to sound like a real poker player, that's what a flopping a set means, or having a set in poker. Let's go to term number two that most people don't understand in Texas Hold'em poker, and that's an overpair. What does an overpair mean? An overpair is when you have a pair that is higher than the board. So you have to have a pocket pair in your hand, and you can be over the board. So let me explain it to you. You have pocket jacks, and the flop comes 7, 5, 8, anything lower than a pair of jacks, and you have an overpair to the board because it's not possible for your pair to be beat with one pair. Now, someone could have two pair, they could have three of a kind, they could have set, straight, something like that. So you could be beat, but when you'll hear someone say, when you say, okay, I call, and they'll say, I have an overpair. So if you have an overpair, you have a higher pair than the board. So if your pair is lower than, if it's the board, if you're playing off the board, like a pair of tens in that case, an ace 10, you know you're beat because that person has an overpair. Okay, let's talk about term number three that a lot of people don't know in Texas Hold'em, and that's under the gun. Under the gun, bang, bang, bang. And what does that mean exactly? Okay, now, it's just a poker term. It doesn't mean anything else than that. It's just a terminology, like I said. And to be under the gun in poker is when you're in the first position. You have to be the first person to act in the hand, and that's what it means exactly. So the first action is on you always. So you're the person next to the big blind, left of the big blind, and that's under the gun. That's what it means. So you're the first person to act in the hand. So the pressure is on you first to act. Term number four that not everyone knows, and that's a backdoor flush. What is a backdoor flush? Okay, you can catch a backdoor flush or a backdoor straight. Let's talk specifically about a backdoor flush. A backdoor flush is when you go running cards to make your flush. So a lot of times to make your flush, you say I have a flush draw. You might have two hearts in your hand. Say you have an ace 10 of hearts in your hand and there's two hearts on the board, then you have a flush draw. But if you only flop one heart, then you only have three in your hand, so you don't really have a draw, but you do have a backdoor flush draw. You might hear some people say that. So if you have the ace 10 of hearts and the flop is a 10, a 6, and a 4, you have a pair of 10s, ace kicker with the backdoor flush draw. So you have that extra little draw. If it comes heart, heart, you can make the ace high flush. So makes that hand a little bit stronger in that case to have that backdoor flush draw, and you will catch those backdoor flushes once in a while. So it has to go running hearts or running diamonds or whatever to make your flush. So that's what that means. Wonder if you knew that. So coming up to number five, I hope you knew all the first four terms. Let's see how you're doing so far. You 4 for 4. Number five, what is drawing to an inside straight? You'll hear some people say, I caught the inside straight, or I'm drawing to an inside straight. Drawing to an inside straight means you have less cards to make your straight than if you're open-ended. That's another term in poker. So if you have a chance to draw a straight, but you need that middle card to make the straight, then you're drawing for an inside straight. So if you have an ace king and the board is 10 queen 5, for instance, you have an inside straight draw because you need that jack to fill up your straight. So we'll give you 10 jack, queen king ace, for example. So there's only 4 cards in the deck that can make your inside straight. They're the 4 jacks in the deck that can make your straight. So you could draw that jack and make the ace high straight in that instance. So No matter what card you need, if it's an inside straight, it's that middle card for the straight. That's an inside straight draw. Hope you knew what the inside straight was. Okay, let's go up to term number 6 that not every poker player is going to know, every Texas Hold'em player, but now you're going to know after watching this informative poker video. Term number 6, and that is open-ended. You can also have a straight draw or that's open-ended. Okay, so open-ended means that you have, for instance, 9, 10, Jack, Queen. You have 2 ways to make the straight. You can make it with the high card or you can make it with the low card. So you can make it, go ahead and make it with the King. We'll give you 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King. Or you can make it with the 8, and you can have the 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King. So you have an open-ended draw in that case. That's quite a good position to be in because you have more outs and more outs. Outs are cards that will give you the hand you're looking for, the best hand possible. So those are what the outs mean, will make your hand. So you have 8 cards in that situation when you're open-ended as opposed to the inside straight where you have 4 cards only to make your hand. So you have a lot more options, a lot more chances to make that straight. Your odds are much higher. So a lot of people will go for those open-ended straight draws because you have a good chance of hitting them or betting them as well, betting them aggressively because if someone does call you, you can catch that straight possibly. Okay, number 7, and this is a funny poker term that first time I heard it, I was like, what is that? But everybody will talk about this. You're going to hear this constantly at the table, and the people are going to say, I have the nuts. So what does having the nuts mean? Okay, it doesn't mean you have big kahunas to call. It's nothing like that. It's having the nuts is having the best possible hand with the board that's out there. Okay, so whatever board is out there, it's the best hand possible. So if there's 3 hearts on the board, the best possible hand is the ace high flush, so that would be the best possible hand possible. So if there's a flush out there, it's having the highest flush possible. Or if there's a straight out there, if there's 7, 8, 9 on the board, the best possible hand, as long as it's not 3 suited, would be to have the 10 Jack. That would be having the nuts because you have the nut straight, the highest straight possible. So 7, 8, 9, 10 Jack. And so it just depends on what cards are on the board. So having the nuts, when people say I have the nuts, I have the best possible hand available. So they likely have a very, very strong hand. They have a set or they have even 4 of a kind, something like that, or the highest straight or the highest flush available, which is great to have the nuts always. Okay, number 8, let's move into that. This is a term that only real poker players normally you'll hear this from. You will not hear this from every poker player, and they'll say a rainbow flop. The flop was a rainbow flop. And what does a rainbow flop mean? Is it something to do with Skittles? No. Rainbow flop means you had 3 different color flops. So why they say a rainbow flop a lot of times is it means there's no possible flush draw out there. So if you have an overpair over to the board, which I talked about in another term, and there's a rainbow flop, it's a very good flop for an overpair because you don't have to worry about somebody catching a flush draw or having that flush draw. So unless they go backdoor to the flush, it's the only possible flush. So it takes a few outs away. So if you have a pair of kings, something like that, and you get a low flop and it's a rainbow, that's normally a good flop unless somebody flopped a set. So you can always be beat, but that's a good flop. And somebody will say they flopped, the flop was a rainbow. I felt very strong with that because it was a rainbow flop. So I might even have checked it, trying to get my opponent to bet, as opposed to if there's a flush draw out there where he's got to protect his hand. Okay, let's move into number 9, and that's Broadway. What is Broadway? I flopped Broadway. Is that some kind of Broadway show? No, it means flopping the ace high straight. Flopping the ace high straight is 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace, and that is Broadway. So when you hear someone, I made Broadway or I flopped Broadway, they have the ace high straight. So love that name. I'm not 100% sure why they call it Broadway. Maybe it has to do with you got the Queen, the King, the Jack, you got all the high cards involved. But that's what they call it. They call it Broadway. Okay, the last poker term that you might not know about, and it's actually, we're going to discuss them all, what they call all parts of the board, and that's the flop, which you probably know about, the turn, and the river. Do you know what the flop, turn, and river are? Most people know what the flop is. The flop is the first 3 cards that come out on the board that the dealer lays out. Face up, that's the flop. So people talk about the flop in poker. I hit the flop, I missed the flop was this, the flop was that. So now you know what they're talking about. They're talking about the first 3 cards out of the deck on the board. That's the flop. The turn is the 4th card that comes out that the dealer deals. That's the 4th card. That's called the turn. So you say the flop, the turn, and then you guessed it, the last card, the money card, is the river. And that is the most important card in Texas Hold'em poker because it determines the winner of the hand. So that's the river. And a lot of people say, if it wasn't for the river, I would be a millionaire in poker. And it just seems like that. It seems like that river card always is something crazy where it can kill your hand. So that's the great sport of Texas Hold'em poker. And if you knew all 10 of these terms, pat yourself on the back, give yourself a clap, because you are fantastic. You are a true Texas Hold'em player. And if you didn't, if you learned something, I hope you did, and you can maybe throw down some poker knowledge in your next outing or your next home game or your next family tournament. So hope you enjoyed this video, brought to you by runhorse.com sports, and we'll see you in the next video. Hope you enjoy your poker. Take care, everyone.